Transformers Titans Return was more painful than shoving a power drill in my eye socket. Welcome to Ruined Forever. I don't care anymore. Let's just get this over with. Absolutely nothing from the previous monstrosity of this series was improved. I'm not sure which of the two series was worse, but Titans Return was certainly longer. 10 11-minute episodes were more boring to watch than enduring a day of school. Watching this show was a chore, and though it provided me with some good laughs, I had a better time watching Energon than I did Titans Return. Energon is so bad it's hilarious, but this is just sad. If you enjoyed this series, I'm really glad to hear that, and I'm sure Machinma is as well. But I, for one, certainly did not enjoy it, and I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in saying that. In this video, I'm going to be talking about why Titans Return is absolute garbage. Now, where do I begin?
No! No! No!
The animation of Titans Return is the easiest thing to pick apart, so I'll start there. Much like Combiner Wars, it still looked worse than me trying to play 4K Minecraft on a Nokia phone. The frame rate was arse, and though it didn't bother me as much as it seemed to bother others, it was physically painful during panning shots. I threw up several times. Thanks, Hasbro. A show like this would be absolutely amazing if it were animated smoothly, but because it's simply easier to animate, the show runs at a horrific 15 frames per second, and it makes everything feel even more stilted and stiff. The character models themselves look fantastic. They're incredibly detailed. Still images of the show make it look awesome. And it's only when you watch it in motion do you realize how terrible it really looks. Almost all of the action scenes in this show come out so bafflingly terrible. I can picture so easily how cool the scriptwriters must have thought it was when they wrote it up, and then how disappointed they must have been when they saw the final product. Okay, so here, the Mistress of Flame creates clones of herself and rapidly attacks Overlord with as much power as she has, but he just stands there, unaffected, despite her barrage of powerful attacks. What the hell is that? I mean, a lot of scenes should have been really cool, and I can tell the intentions were good. But instead, they just look, I don't know, awkward? The editing and sound design in this show is so incredibly awful that it makes me appreciate how good sound design is everywhere else so much more. The part of the show that should be the most exciting, the actual Titan fights, are some of the most boring things I've ever had to witness, due to the painful lack of sound effects and music. They were so anticlimactic because we had to watch two models move super slowly and barely touch each other, repeatedly. The blows have less power in this show than when I smash toys together. Watch this clip of one of the Titan battles. This is unedited. Now watch it with some decent sound effects and music. Isn't that so much more exciting? These scenes in particular are what lead me to believe that they didn't even finish the sound design section. They just kind of forgot. When there actually is music, it's pretty good, and really adds to the scene it assists. But most of the time, particularly in the fights, the music is completely absent. Sadly, it's not even slightly improved from Combiner Wars. There's a lack of drama and excitement due to the absence of sound design, and it's what makes the show feel so vapid, empty, and lifeless. How they managed to make a concept so incredibly awesome, so boring, is far beyond me. Okay, what was good about this show? I've had enough of complaining. There was, The plot in this show is arguably better than Combiner Wars, but a gay Harry Potter fanfiction written by a 13-year-old has better plot than that show did. The problem with Titans Return is that it simply does not have enough plot to fill its painfully long 10 episodes, and so it does its best to drag out the plot as long as physically possible. Man, that sounds familiar. The fight scenes, which should be the best part of the show, are aggravatingly boring and stretched out, such as Overlord and the Mistress of Flame battle, or the excruciating experience that was Trypticon and Metroplex's duel. The Titans are gonna return any second now. Continuously repeated shots without cutaways or music make them look more like an animation test than a final product. The entire plot of the show is various attempts and failures to beat Trypticon. It all begins with Starscream Spark possessing the Titan, and then that's the rest of the whole show. I'm not kidding. I mean, there's some pointless Overlord plot thrown in there that never really receives a conclusion, but the reason the show feels so pointlessly dragged out is because all it really is Trypticon battling everyone until he finally gives up and dies. I wish I was exaggerating, but literally for 9 episodes it's just Trypticon rampaging across Cybertron, and I use that word very lightly.
Trypticon?
Cease this destruction.
Yeah, that'll stop him. There's never really any stakes or excitement from anything that's happened due to the aforementioned stiff action scenes. Maybe this wasn't the same for others, but I just didn't care what was happening. A lot of plot threads just didn't really go anywhere, and everything was so messily thrown together. Overlord's plot is clearly meant to be a setup for the next show, but Titan's Return initially spends so much time on it, only to completely abandon it near the end. And the ending of Titan's Return can go die. It was almost as atrocious as Combiner Wars' ending. Basically, Trypticon consumes Victorion.
Your threat is ended, monster!
You're a fucking idiot.
Which allows him to become stronger or something, and then he controls the other Combiners to fight Optimus, and then Perceptor decides it's a good idea to get himself and the Matrix eaten, which causes the jacked Trypticon to throw up everything and turn back to normal, before releasing Starscream, who proceeds to do nothing and then disappears. Then, for some reason, the Fallen shows up, apparently having masterminded the entire thing, and Optimus' plan to deal with one of the original goddamn 13 primes is to slash him with an axe, which surprisingly fails. Then, as he is being violently shot through the chest, not a single person attempts to help him at all. Instead, they all just watch intently. Oh, hey, that's cool. Then when Optimus dies, no one gives a shit, and then the screenwriters remembered Overlord existed, and he comes back with a black hot rod because he put a purple thing in his chest a few episodes earlier. What the fuck? Throughout the series, Optimus hints at there being other forces at play, but the reason for doing so doesn't make much sense. These three ideas, Combiners, Titans, and Primes, they're largely unrelated, and it's clearly a struggle for the writers to make these three concepts string along in a continuous plot. Why would it benefit the Fallen to awaken Combiners and Titans? Why not just kill everyone and take what he needs? He sort of just comes out of nowhere and suddenly takes credit for actions that would in no way benefit him. I'm sure we'll all receive a shoehorned explanation, but what we don't receive an explanation for is why the Fallen is suddenly alive. Returns hints at their version of the 13 Primes, but doesn't necessarily tell the story, instead relying on the audience already knowing the Transformers mythos. Problem is, Returns doesn't make it clear what story we're supposed to be following. Is this Fallen like the Aligned one? The Dreamwave one? The IDW one? Friggin' Rescue Bots? One of the things that pissed me off the most about these abominations is seemingly how uninhabited Cybertron is. I get 3D animation is hard work and all, but they didn't even make an effort to make it seem like anyone else lived on the planet except the main cast. I mean, even Robots in Disguise threw in some generics for God's sake. The destruction from the battles with Metroplex and Trypticon caused enormous amounts of damage and would have seemingly killed thousands. But apparently no one on Cybertron gives a shit. This is just another Monday. That, or the planet is completely abandoned for some unexplained reason. Titan's Return has a lot of cool ideas, especially for a Transformers show. The basic storyline and script isn't that bad. It's just the execution that horribly butchered those cool ideas. There's no cohesion between the different teams working on the show. They all seem to drastically vary in professionalism, and it comes out as this seemingly unfinished mess that is far too weak in several areas to serve as an enjoyable and completed show. To me, it just didn't seem like the teams working on it were really working together. It seems like they were all just told what to do without any proper communication, and this was the end result. The plentiful Transformers references are appreciated, but essentially wasted when the show goes to the effort to ignore anything in Transformers that makes sense. Like, for example, the Combiners combining to become a bigger Combiner. How do we make something seem more powerful? Just give it a galaxy texture, they'll get the message. It even ignores its own established rules. Emissary is apparently able to bond with the Titans to provide them with extra abilities. Take Metroplex's eye lasers, for example, even though he's supposed to become the head of Cerebros, who is the head of Maximus, but whatever. Well, when Trypticon abducts Emissary, he gains fire breath, but when Emissary escapes him, he still has the fire breath for no discernible reason. Also, Emissary not once combines with Maximus, despite apparently the entire point of his character being diffused with him, but whatever. I hate so much how Hasbro is acting like this is the perfect show for older fans of Transformers. Aight, we'll brainwash the kids with this garbage, and keep the ones that keep whining at bay with this animated masterpiece. No, Hasbro, no one wants this. Please stop. However, other people seem to like it, I guess. Let me just fix that for you. There we go. Nope, I still got nothing. They're
gonna build an army!
In a shocking twist that surprised nobody, the characters in Titan's Return are just as bland and paper thin as they were in the previous show. Who'd have thought? The only new characters are the Titans, who had less character than a piece of wood, Perceptor, and Overlord. Perceptor in this show has made me now hate Perceptor forever, and the fact that he's voiced by Will Block every single YouTuber on Twitter, Wheaton, just makes me hate him even more. His presence added nothing to the show, and his character was so boring and bland, relying solely on Perceptor's most basic character aspects. Ah, well, he's the smart one. Make him say smart things. Replace him with any other Transformers character and nothing would have changed. It could have been freaking Erector, I mean. Overlord is... Overlord seemed to be written in just as threatening as we've gotten used to in recent years, and I admit I appreciated that. But, as I said, the show fumbled the execution of it. For one, his voice is absolutely terrible, and the show doesn't do much to make him look all that strong. Rather, just make the Mistress of Flame seem incredibly pathetic.
Be gone!
Still, he does kill her, which is... cool? Wow, Thundercrackers, Skywalker, and they're all dead. Okay. Rodimus's transition into Hot Rod was quite frankly one of the most painful things I've ever had to bear witness to, as the scriptwriters fumbled to make his character seem young and relatable. However, Hot Rod definitely served as an improvement from Delayed Reaction Miss Prime. He started off as the worst thing ever and quickly became the best character in the whole show, though he's not competing with much. But of course, his character gets hurt and disappears near the end because reasons. See how it feels, Hot Rod? However, Rodimus just suddenly reverting to Hot Rod after giving up the Matrix felt pointless and really forced. His feelings about not being worthy were ridiculous, because in Combiner Wars he showed no sign of feeling, well, anything. On that note, if Rodimus gave the Matrix back to the Primal Basilica, and so reverted back to his prior state, why didn't Optimus become Orion Pax again? Or did he pass the Matrix to Rodimus? We don't know, because this god-awful mess doesn't explain anything. The Fallen was a nice surprise, even if you look like a dumbass, and it's interesting to see him finally being portrayed in a G1-esque cartoon continuity. I actually do look forward to seeing more of him, especially considering his awesome voice. Who voiced him again? Mark Hamill? What? That's amazing! Why did it take this show for that to happen? An emissary was... Fuck this show. The Combiners are just as useless and boring as ever, but at the very least, Victorion does something in this show. That's progress. The cast felt tiny, and as I said before, considering the show takes place in Central Cybertron, with presumably a shit ton of Autobots living on the planet, it was just incredibly disappointing to see such a small amount of characters. It would have helped if the writers remembered that Combiners can actually decombine, but yeah, that would have taken actual effort. Okay, this time I got one for real. They didn't misspell any of the episode titles. That's one up on Energon. Good work, team.
What up? It's that sheep!
Once again, the voice acting is the biggest gripe for me, and is most definitely the show's greatest downfall. This time around, Machinma thought if they brought in some actually decent voice actors, it would save the show. As it turns out, you need competent scriptwriters to write dialogue that doesn't sound like shit, otherwise the voice acting will sound terrible too. And guess what? It did sound terrible. The delivery of so many lines was absolutely awful, including Megatron, who I was hoping would be just as good as he was in Combiner Wars. But instead, he came out just as flat and disappointing as every other character in the show. They had an all-star cast of voice actors. Peter Cullen, Mark Hamill, Will Wheaton, apparently Rob Dyke is someone important, and all of them delivered their lines awfully.
Now! Press the advantage now!
What? But that's most likely not their fault. The script probably looked like this.
Suck my exhaust pipe.
Stop! Also, whoever's idea it was to include YouTubers as voice actors needs to be fired. There are so many YouTubers that are brilliant voice actors. But no, let's get freaking MatPat. Yeah, good work, guys. All I could hear from Compatron is why he sent the Pope Undertale. And look, I don't care if Dashi Games is a famous YouTuber. I'm sure he's a great guy and all, but he is an atrocious voice actor.
And you will strike it with maximum force.
They're gonna build?
They obviously attempted to include some more humorous dialogue, specifically with Windblade and Hot Rod. Surprise! It came out as terrible and incredibly forced. And due to the incredibly piss-poor sound design, there's so many awkward pauses between dialogue where no one says anything and nothing happens, and it's so painfully noticeable.
Yeah, you're gonna do nicely.
What?
And Windblade continued to be as boring and stilted as ever. She's the one the scriptwriters clearly tried to give some funny lines to, but it failed miserably. She is easily the worst character in the whole series, due to the spotlight constantly being given to her. Dear God, she's like this show's Ironhide. I mean no disrespect to any of the voice actors, because I know voice acting isn't nearly as easy as it sounds. But almost all of the voice work in this show felt so unnatural and forced. And that was what really killed the show for me. Much like with Combiner Wars. It's so amateurishly done, and it really contributes to Titan's return feeling like a disjointed and unfinished mess.
Oh, Scrud.
Are you They dragged poor Peter into this. He doesn't deserve that. He deserves better.
Why are we still here? Just to suffer.
Let's never do that again.
I wouldn't say Titans Return is necessarily lazy. It's just not up to the standard that all of us are expecting. We all want it to be a lot better than the team working on it is capable of. But in our defense, Hasbro keeps advertising it like it's a freaking godsend. Although I must give credit where credit is due, they did include a very realistic simulation of what watching Titans Return is like.
Windblade! You've got to disengage!
The whole series could have been half the length. In fact, it would have been better as a 30-second commercial.
Oh no, Jazz, look out for the Titans.
Hi everybody, I'm here! Get back!
Starscream?
But hey, that's just a theory.
An army of combat!
May the Force be with you.
I find it hilarious how they decided to limit their already minuscule viewership of the series by placing it on some streaming website by forcing people to sign up to it. But because it only exists in the US, what about everyone else? Screw it, put it on Tumblr with full screen buttons that don't work. Titans Return is an unprofessional, boring mess, and I don't know why I'm surprised. I figured they'd at least improve some things from Combiner Wars, but the whole show somehow managed to keep the same consistent quality because nothing was improved. And surprisingly, bringing in good voice actors didn't change that. I have zero hope for Power of the Primes, and all I want is for this god-awful trilogy to be over. If anyone thinks I'm being unnecessarily harsh, you might be right. I certainly don't mean to sound malicious towards the people creating it. I just feel like they could do so much more with this series. I do feel for the people that put in so much effort to make this show happen. I just want this series to be so much more, especially due to how Hasbro keeps advertising it. It could and should be so much more, and yet it's this amateurish mess that feels more like a fan series than an officially licensed product. Whether you love it or hate it, I'm sure we can all agree that Titans Return was definitely one thing: disappointing. We're getting dangerously close to Energon levels here, guys. Let's just hope that Power of the Primes can improve where Titans Return failed. Transformers Power of the Primes was a disappointing, horrible mess of a show,